Tanner was the guy that was clearly going to be the heir apparent to the Lions offensive coordinator spot. But this year, that's really started to just kind of go away. As time went on, that like started to go into the background a little bit more, and it seemed like the Lions were moving away from that idea.
Today on JetCast, I'm interviewing Mike Payton of A to Z Sports. Mike has been covering the Detroit Lions for over a decade now. He's going to give us the inside scoop on new head coach Aaron Glenn and new offensive coordinator Tanner Engstrand. Let's get into it. All right, everybody, I want to welcome Mike Payton from A to Z Sports. Mike, how are you?
Good, Pat. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Thanks for coming on. Can you just give our fans a little bit of a background about your history and how you came to be a writer for the Lions?
Yeah. Well, I've been covering the Lions since 2014 for all the Athletic and A to Z Sports, SB Nation. I've kind of been all over the place.
Yeah.
Also worked for a news station in Grand Rapids, WZZM 13. I'm their Lions insider. So, yeah, my whole life is the Lions, and it's been that way for quite a while.
Are you a fan of the Lions too, or is it just you write
Yeah.
for them?
Yeah, I love the team. The thing I tell people all the time is I love this team so much I made a career out of them. So like it's just yeah, I'm obsessed. I'm a little obsessed. Yeah, I think it's probably the healthy way to say it.
Like me, I'm trying to make a life out of it.
Yeah.
So, all right. So for us Jeff fans, we know. I mean, I watched Aaron Glenn play. He was my favorite player, one of my favorite players as a kid. Being able to be drafted from a team that wasn't at the time very good and watching a rebuild, becoming really a Parcells disciple. I, for one, love the hire. You guys know on this channel, I wanted Vrabel, but obviously that wasn't going to happen once the Patriots let Gerard Mayo go. But I want to ask you if you could describe Glenn's leadership style. What kind of presence does he have in the locker room? Because I think a lot of us Jeff fans really only know him as a player. And honestly, his first press conference went very well, but you've been around him a hell of a lot more than I have. So give me an idea of what kind of a coach you think he's going to be.
Yeah, so a lot of people, they love Dan Campbell and kind of the culture builder that he has been, the guy that just, is a leader of men, somebody that the players love and respect. That's Aaron Glenn to a T. He's the defensive version of Dan Campbell. That's what I've always said. I know a lot of people liked Ben Johnson and thought he was, the guy that every team wanted. But for me, I've been saying it. I've been pounding the table for the last 2 years. A team that needs a head coach needs Aaron Glenn more than they need Ben Johnson. I think the Jets, they absolutely went the best possible way they could have gone. This is a guy that, as like I've said, he is loved by every single player in that locker room. And it's not just, it's not just them saying it, it's them showing it. Last year, the NFLPA had every single player vote on coordinators and head coaches and all sorts of different things. Aaron Glenn was voted the most loved and liked coordinator in the NFL by far. And like he got so many votes that he would have not only been the best defensive coordinator, he would have been the best offensive guy too. Like he's just, that's how big of a deal he is to the players that play for him. And they'll run through a wall for this guy. I mean, this is exactly what this Jets team needs: a culture builder, somebody who's going to come in, get the team to love him, get the team to trust him. He's going to handle the New York media like I don't think anybody else has. We've already seen him with these Aaron Rodgers questions. He's just shrugging them off, and he's just the perfect man for the job. I can't say it any other way. This is the best hire the Jets could have made.
So, how would you say he developed talent from the defensive side of the ball in Detroit? How much would you say he was involved in sort of the drafting process and the scouting process for guys on the defensive side of the ball?
Yeah, I think he had a lot to do with the big thing in Detroit is positional versatility. So they're looking for guys like Brian Branch is the best example of that. Can play safety, can play inside corner, outside corner, can do it all. That's the kind of guys that Aaron Glenn loves. And basically anybody they've drafted or signed has had the ability to do more than one thing. And that's, even goes to the, like, if you could play special teams too, that and you can only do one thing on defense, you better be able to at least play special teams as well.
Hmm.
They, that's the Lions philosophy. You got to be able to do a bunch of different things, and I think that is something he's going to bring over to New York with him for sure. He's looking for defenders who can do a lot, can fill in and anywhere in a pinch, and you can move them all over the chessboard. That's the type of guy he's going to be looking for.
So Jet fans and a lot of guys that watch this channel, we're very emotional. Okay, we make decisions and we make opinions on a lot of knee jerk reactions, and I feel like that last game against the Commanders really spoiled um, Aaron Glenn for a decent portion of the fan base, whether it was rational or unrational. um, he's faced criticisms at times for his defense.
Yeah.
Um, how well do you think he has adjusted to those criticisms, and how much of that criticism really falls on him? Because I know there was a lot of injuries this year on the defensive side of the ball for the Lions.
Yeah, we always talk about how injuries are part of the game, and you can't really say that, that's something that cost a team anything. But the Lions, took that to just a completely different understanding this year. They not only lost a great deal of their starters, they lost the guys that were backing those guys up too. They were signing dudes off the street, undrafted players, veterans who were just trying to find a home. It was bad, but what he was able to do with those guys in such short order, you look to that Week 18 game against the Vikings. That's a tough offense. That's a pretty good group to be able to go in there and hold to 9 points with the guys that you were doing it with. Um, we knew kind of going into that Washington game that mobile quarterbacks were the thing that was going to be hard. That was going to be hard to stop. It's been hard for the Lions to stop even when they have, fully healthy defenses. But I think every team struggles with that issue. But with the guys that they were going into that game with, we knew that was going to be a problem. I don't think that really changed the way that I think about Aaron Glenn. I think that he's still a great defensive coordinator. I think that even through the criticisms, he's still stuck to his plan, and eventually it started to work. And this was a top 5 defense in DVOA this year. This is a really good group, even when they went through all the injuries, and it was because of Glenn.
So now I'm going to kind of ask you as a fan, more or less, what were your opinions of him when he was first hired? Like he was coming from at the Saints at the time, right?
Yeah.
Like what did you guys like the hire? Were you guys questionable about it? Were you not sure? What was the general feeling when he first got in the building?
I remember there was some excitement when Glenn got hired because he was an up and coming positional coach at the time. Everybody kind of knew that he was somebody who was on the rise. And I remember I had some colleagues that wrote articles about why the Lions should hire Glenn before they actually did. So I don't think there was any hesitation. There was more so on the offensive side with Anthony Lynn. There was a lot of, like, why would you hire that guy questions. But defensively, I think everybody knew Aaron Glenn was going to be good.
Okay, so as far as up and coming coaches, coordinators, we got to talk about Engstrand because I think Glenn, I agree with you. I think Glenn is a really good defensive coordinator. I think he's going to be a really good head coach, but the Jets have not seen a functioning offense since 2015, if we're being honest here. Okay. With Ryan Fitzpatrick throwing to Brandon Marshall and Eric Decker. So who is Engstrand really? Because I think a lot of us Jet fans don't really know much about him. I know they just kind of wanted to go with Nick Caley out of LA, but he turned them down. And then a lot of us fear that Engstrand is kind of a consolation prize. It's obviously from Glenn's perspective, maybe not the guy he first wanted to go with, but obviously he has a relationship with him. So, what kind of a role did Engstrand really have in the organization. I know he was the passing game coordinator. How much say did he have as far as the offensive philosophy there?
Well, it's an interesting story with him because initially, when he comes in under Matt Patricia in 2020, he's an offensive assistant, and then he started climbing the ranks in offensive quality control, and then he was helping out in tight ends, and then he became the pass game coordinator, and he worked with Ben Johnson this whole time, and there was this idea for a long time that if Ben were to leave, Tanner was the guy that was clearly going to be the heir apparent to the Lions offensive coordinator spot. But this year, that's really started to just kind of go away. As time went on, that like started to go into the background a little bit more, and it seemed like the Lions were moving away from that idea. And we haven't really been able to find out why. And I guess we are going to find out when he's the offensive coordinator with the Jets if he's apt for this job. But he's been a fast riser. He had been somebody that everybody thought was going to, like I said, was going to take that role from Ben Johnson once he left. But as of late, that's cooled off, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But in terms of what he can bring, he was instrumental in helping Sam Laporta and some of the tight ends kind of get to where they're at now. He was instrumental in helping out with the pass game, not so much the trick plays. So if you're looking for like Ben Johnson type trick plays and things of that nature, I think some of the assistants like JT Barrett and Seth Ryan, and who was actually Rex Ryan's son, some of those guys on the those assistant positional coaches, those are the guys that really helped out with the specials in Detroit a lot more than Engstrand did. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of offense he comes up with, and if it's going to be anything like what Ben Johnson did.
How much do you think he worked with Jared Goff?
I think he was part of that team that certainly helped him, but I think that was more so Mark Brunell and Ben Johnson, doing their thing with him. Plus John Morton, who is now the Lions offensive coordinator, he played a role in that as well. I think Engstrand was in on that, obviously, as the passing coordinator, but in terms of really getting Goff to where he is now, I have to give most of that credit to Johnson, Brunell, and Campbell.
Right. And we don't know what kind of play caller he's going to be quite honest with you. And I was always worried with a younger guy like this trying to instill an offense on Aaron Rodgers. But now, obviously, that's not going to be an issue because Aaron Rodgers pretty clearly is not going to be here in 2025. So I like the idea of him having someone younger, someone that can draft, someone that he can maybe mold. But we just don't know if that mold is going to be great or if it's going to be bad because, like you said, we just kind of don't know about him. We know he's a West Coast style guy, right? He comes from a system like that, but
Yeah.
he's never called plays from an NFL perspective. He's done it in college, though, correct? He did it in San Diego a while back. He was the offensive coordinator, technically, from a college perspective, right?
Yeah, he was at San Diego, and he was in the it was either the XFL or the UFL, one of those USFL rather, for the DC
Okay.
Defenders. He was their offensive coordinator for a year as well too. But um, I think that the one thing that you got to feel a little bit good about is Darren Mogi obviously knows this guy. They were quarterbacks together at San Diego along with Kevin O'Connell.
Mhm.
Uh, I think that this is somebody that he trusts. And again, I was kind of shocked that it cooled off as much as it did with him being the heir apparent. But I still think that this isn't a bad hire. I don't think the Jets made a huge mistake here. They probably could have gone with somebody else, a little bit more experience, but should be interesting to see what happens here.
So, last one for you. Uh, to going back to the fan side of it. How do you feel about basically the entire NFL kind of picking your team apart here? Defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, Engstrand. I think we got your tight end. Was it your tight ends coach, O line coach? No, not O
Steve
line coach.
Steve Hayden was our tight ends coach, but he's now
Tight
your
ends coach.
offensive line coach. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, where do the Lions kind of go from here? I know Dan Campbell, I think, is a fantastic coach, but Do you feel like it's going to be hard to kind of replace these guys?
Well, I think it's all about having a good contingency plan. I mean, we see a lot of teams go through this. The Eagles won the Super Bowl last night with two offensive, an offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator who were, in their first year with the Eagles. So it happens. Sometimes when you get good, teams start taking away your coaches. It's something that we've never really experienced here in Detroit because we just have, this team
I've never
hasn't been good.
experienced it either.
Yeah, this team hasn't been good for a long time. But I really like the contingency plan and the ideas that they have. I think, Aaron Glenn is a tough, tough loss, but Calvin Shepard is somebody that I think could have been a defensive coordinator 3 years ago. I just believe that he's a lot like Glenn in the sense that he's a leader of men and he's going to have everybody loving him. And John Morton and replacing Ben Johnson, we'll have to see what happens there. We've been used to so many crazy trick plays and all these things, and I feel like that's probably going to go away a little bit. And yeah, it's going to be an adjustment for sure. But so far, they're hiring some good guys, and I thought the David Shaw hire was a really good one, and we'll see where they go.
Listen, I think a lot of Jet fans could, if we could take just a tiny bit of the Lions' success and plant it in the Jets, I think the fan base would go nuts. So, Mike, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate it. You gave us, a lot of good insight, I think, on Glenn and your opinions on what kind of coach him and Engstrand are going to be. So, again, thank you. And where can people find you?
You find me on Twitter at A to Z _ Payton, and you could find me on WZZM 13 during the season. Every Friday I'll be putting up Lions game plan videos if you're into watching those. And then I'm on YouTube at A to Z YouTube at we're on A to Z Sports YouTube Detroit. I can't remember exactly what
I'll put a link in the description
but
of the video. Don't worry.
we do short little 5-minute videos 3 times a week. So yep, you can
Great.
find me all over the place.
All right. Thanks a lot, man. And for you guys that got to the end of the video, thanks for hanging out. Give us a like and a subscribe. We're going to have more of these interviews as the offseason continues and as the Jets move into the draft.